So I got fired from my third job in a year, and I know how that sounds. It sounds like I'm the problem. And honestly, for a while, I thought I was the problem too. Then I found out what was actually going on. Quick background. I do warehouse work, picking, packing, loading. The kind of work where nobody asks about your resume. I've been doing it since I aged out of foster care at 18. Job 1. Hired in January, fired in March. I told my supervisor that skipping breaks during 12-hour shifts was illegal. He decided I was a troublemaker. Job 2. Hired in April, fired in July. I reported a forklift with faulty brakes that everybody knew about, but nobody wanted to document. Job 3. Hired in September, fired in November. The manager seemed decent. Then I overheard him telling another worker I came with baggage. I asked what he meant. He said my references weren't great. I didn't have references. I'm 22. I aged out of foster care with a garbage bag of clothes and a GED. The only references I had were the supervisors who'd fired me from jobs 1 and 2. So I called them. Both of them. I used a friend's phone and pretended to be a hiring manager doing a reference check. The first one said I was difficult and didn't follow the chain of command. The second one said I had a history of complaints and wasn't a team player. They were blackballing me. Not formally. Nobody puts this stuff in writing anymore. But every time I applied somewhere and they called my previous employers, these two guys were poisoning the well. The kid who reported an illegal brake policy and a busted forklift was being described as a problem employee. I didn't have money for a lawyer. I didn't know how any of this worked. What I did have was a co-worker from Job 2 named Denise who worked in HR before she moved to warehouse operations because HR, in her words, made her want to set things on fire. Denise helped me file a complaint with the state labor board. She helped me write it up properly, with dates and specifics. She also told me that in our state, former employers are legally limited in what they can say during reference checks, basically name, dates of employment, and whether they'd rehire you. Anything beyond that is actionable. The labor board investigated. I don't know the details of what happened behind closed doors, but I know that 3 months later, supervisor number 1 was fired and the company from job 2 settled with me for an amount I'm not going to share except to say it covered my rent for long enough to breathe. But here's the part that matters. During all of this, Denise introduced me to a guy named Paul who runs a small logistics company. Paul is the kind of person who hires based on what he sees, not what he's told. He gave me a trial shift. I showed up, worked hard, didn't complain, and loaded a truck faster than his regular guy. He hired me full-time. That was 14 months ago. I haven't been fired. I haven't filed a complaint. I haven't needed to, because the brakes on every forklift work and the brakes happen when they're supposed to. Last month, Paul told me he wants to train me for a shift lead position. I told him I didn't have any leadership experience. He said, "You reported a safety violation at a job you couldn't afford to lose. That's leadership." I went home and sat in my apartment, with my name on the lease, which still feels like a novelty, and thought about that. A guy I've known for a year sees more in me than any of the systems that were supposed to be raising me ever did. I'm not the problem. I never was. I was just a kid with no references and no safety net who kept telling the truth in places where the truth was expensive. Denise texts me every couple of weeks to check in. She always signs off the same way. Don't let them make you quiet. I won't.